Varka going to be free-to-play friendly? Let's talk about it. My name is Juice, and let's get into it. So the interesting thing with Varka is that he does actually have a free-to-play 4-star team that you can use. Sucrose is going to be a viable replacement for Venti because she has Hexarai buffs, and there are other existing Hexarai characters that you're able to use, so you do not require Venti and Durin if you don't have those units. So he can definitely be used without other 5-star characters. They are not going to be a necessity. However, the big difference kicks in if you care more about how he actually performs. If you want your Varka to be really strong, then he does ideally want his best-in-slot team or other 5-star characters. The issue is, Varka is not as inherently strong as other 6.x characters. A lot of people might look at a unit like Flynn's and assume that he's not free-to-play friendly, but in my opinion, he absolutely is. Because even though he is definitely better with an Effa, as opposed to without her, he doesn't need her because his free-to-play baseline is still really good. Varka's free-to-play baseline is not that good. He really wants his signature weapon, and when I say he really wants it, I mean that he has probably one of the biggest signature weapon gaps we've seen in recent times. And the big issue with that is consider how Flynn's using Staff of the Scarlet Sands literally only loses 3% compared to his signature weapon. Consider how Jabai is really good on Harbinger of Dawn. Varka, however, he really wants his signature weapon. Now, if you have his Sig and you have his best-in-slot team, or if you have Columbina in Effa wheelchair, then he is going to be able to perform decently and he is going to be able to do some decent damage. But that is a lot of cost for just decent performance by 6.x standards, and that brings me on to a point that isn't really set in stone, so I wouldn't put too much weight onto it, but we still have a missing slot in Varka's team. We could potentially get a Hexarai buffer there that may hopefully save Varka's performance, but I'm honestly not that confident about it. But let's say that does happen, then that's just going to make Varka extremely expensive, because in order to access 6.x damage standards, you're going to need to have a full 5-star team, which the other 6.x DPSs just don't require. The only other DPS that is this cooked is Nafer, but the nice thing about Nafer is that if you do have all of her premium gear, she absolutely performs and is among one of the best DPSs in the game. Whereas with Varka, if you fulfill all of his cost requirements, then he's nowhere near as good. Like, not even close. So while he's definitely not bad, you don't really get good return on your investment. And if you're pulling for a character at just baseline free-to-play level, 4-star teammates, no signature weapon, then in Varka's case, it's just not gonna be good. Especially when you consider we had Jabai recently, who was an amazing pickup for free-to-plays. She was so good. Full strong 4-star team, could use HOD, you get the point. That character's busted for free-to-plays, and Varka is coming out directly after her, so it just kind of ends up looking really bad in his case when we literally had a far better deal in terms of value proposition literally right before him, and also a very strong DPS. So yeah, it's a little awkward. I suppose with Varka, how free-to-play friendly he is just kind of depends on your definition of it, because to say that he's not free-to-play friendly at all would be a little bit silly because he does still function with 4-star teammates and he does have alternative options. So by that metric, he does technically have free-to-play accessibility. It is not like he has none, that would just be wrong, but he does still really want his Sig. He loses a lot without having his Sig. So I suppose one thing I should say is that it wouldn't be fair of me to act like he doesn't have accessible teams, because he just does. Like, if your issue is just, am I gonna be able to use him if I didn't pull for Venti or Durin? Yes, absolutely. The issue is more so just, you're not gonna be impressed with his performance. So if that's all you're wondering, then you'll be fine. The real issue comes from the fact that he really wants a signature weapon, and the maximum damage output that you can get from this guy just doesn't really justify the amount of cost that you would have to put into him, because if you put that cost into any other 6.x unit, you would get far more satisfying results. I really am hoping that they're not done with Varka yet. They gave him an animated short trailer after all. I don't think that they would throw away a character like that if they really are giving him solid marketing, but that is just insane cope. I'm just hanging on by a thread here. I'm hoping for the best, alright? I love the character. But in any case, I think it's best summarized as he's free-to-play friendly in a sense, but I don't really think I can fully call him free-to-play friendly, simply because I cannot say in good faith that a character like this is worth it for a free-to-play, because okay, you can break this down into two different things. Is the character going to be usable at a free-to-play level? And yes, he is. You're definitely going to be able to use him. He has functional teams, but to be honest, that's just kind of the bare minimum in my opinion. Characters like Skirk are just absurd. Characters like Nafer are just absurd. And then the second thing, is the character going to be an actually good pull for a free-to-play? Do they have the actual pull value? And that is an entirely separate matter. The main thing I'm criticizing with Varka is his free-to-play pull value, not necessarily his inherent accessibility. Sucrose is a thing, she has Hexarai buffs, that is more than enough. That is all you really need if you want to just play him in a team. But the issue is that he's not really valuable for a free-to-play. Now, I will say that a case like Jabai was utterly exceptional. The amount of value that that character provided was utterly nuts. Like, genuinely utterly nuts. I would say that Flynn's is probably a more reasonable comparison, because that was a character that definitely does have the potential to be a lot better if you got his best in-slot team, but it was far from a necessity. He's still really strong without it. He's the type of character that, in my opinion, is a worthwhile free-to-play pull. But with Varka, it's not really the same, especially if you already have Venti, and you are perfectly happy to just keep using him as your main Animo DPS, if you've been doing so up until this point. Venti is still strong, and he is probably going to continue to be a pretty good Hexarai DPS for quite a while going forward. So even if you do already have two of Varka's best team components, those being Venti and Durin, then you can literally just take those characters and ditch pulling for Varka, and that is probably going to be a better decision for a free-to-play account, because you already have a strong Animo DPS. You don't really need another one. And it's probably highly likely that Venti is going to thrive in Varka Shell content, because not only is he an Animo DPS, but he's literally the same type of Animo DPS as Varka is. He is a Hexarai Animo DPS whose best-in-slot teammate is Durin. You can literally just ignore getting Varka and move on with your life. So, yeah, it's just really awkward, because unfortunately the character is just very skippable in terms of pull value, and it really is a shame because he's so awesome, but when you consider the amazing value propositions we've gotten this patch, Varka just ends up looking kind of lame in comparison. Another thing that I should point out is that before Varka, I actually thought Columbina was the least valuable 6.x unit. Yes, the Archon equivalent of this region was arguably the least valuable one, because all of the other characters were just so strong in their respective teams, and Columbina more so just acts as a way to either play two lunar teams on both sides, or to give yourself the best possible lunar team for a given lunar DPS. So literally every other 6.x character has been really strong up until this point, and I don't even think the Archon was a necessary pull for like any of them. I should quickly add, she is still a very strong and good character, and she is obviously meta, but my point is that before Varka, the literal Archon of the region was the least valuable pull that you could make in 6.x, and I find that very amusing. Now, obviously, you could make the argument that maybe Durin is less valuable for certain types of accounts that are really invested into lunar teams, but I'd say that's a separate matter, and that's just very account dependent. I'd say for a majority of people, Durin would probably end up being the better pull. But in any case, I do think that Varka is just in a position where if you're a free-to-play, I can't really recommend him. If you want an Animo DPS, I'm unironically gonna suggest that you pull for our glorious Animo Archon Barbados instead. He is very strong at the minute, and he is going to be able to upgrade into a Varka support down the line if Varka ever ends up being really worth pulling for. And I will say that would be the nicest thing that could happen. If, hypothetically, Varka does end up getting saved, consider Venti would also benefit from a Hexarai buffer, and then you could naturally upgrade into getting Varka over time, because Venti on his own is a really good pull now, Durin is an excellent S-tier pull at the minute. You would then get yourself a Hexarai buffer, and then you could invest into Varka, so at least it would give you a solid investment path. But as of now, it's just not really worth it, because while he is accessible in team building, that's basically the only area he is accessible in, and even then, his performance is just lackluster all around. Varka's biggest issue right now is just performance. We need a character that can help exactly that. His performance. Otherwise, he's basically just gonna stay cooked as is. I don't even think he's worth it for people that are low spenders either. Like, just skip the Varka patch, you're gonna have enough for a whole new 5-star, and you can just invest that somewhere else down the line. Like, what purpose is there in getting this character at the minute for, like, anyone? And if you're a whale, then same story, you're just gonna get more out of investing into literally anyone else. I do hope that Varka can eventually get buffed up in some way, shape, or form. I have a hard time believing that Hoyoverse is not aware of how weak he is at the minute, especially for a character that's been teased for as long as he has. And I know that I'm pretty salty about all of this, but you've got to understand, I'm a really big Varka fan, of course I am. But, well, we'll see how it goes. I'm hoping for the best. I haven't necessarily lost hope yet. I have accepted he's just going to be cooked on release. This is just going to be the case no matter what. But I'm excited for him anyway, even if he is fried. But I do have to be completely honest. Even if he is one of my favorite Genshin characters, he's just not good. He is just not good. But it is what it is. Hopefully this video is able to tell you why Varka won't be free-to-play friendly. This has been Juice, signing out, and honestly, I don't care. I've saved up so many Primo gems for him. I'm gonna be getting as many constellations as possible.